Yes guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about something slightly different to my usual content, which is hair system stuff. Today I'm going to be talking about baldness and the effect that it can have on men. I'm going to be throwing in a little bit of scientific research as well, which I found online the other day. So let's dive into this together. Before I dive into this fascinating concept, guys, if you would like to support my content, you've been following for a while, please do hit that subscribe button. You don't have to, but you would be very welcome on this channel. If you'd like the video as well, it will help more people find these kind of videos, hair loss sufferers, hair system wearers, people thinking about getting hair systems and so on and so forth. If you're interested in getting a system, I am partnering with Lavivid right now. There's a discount code in the description box below, 15% off. So if you'd like to avail of that, do check that out. And now let's talk about baldness. So straight off the bat, what I will say regarding hair loss or baldness is that there's not just one cause, there's multiple causes. The predominant cause is male pattern baldness. I know a lot of people watching this video will have been suffering from male pattern baldness. That's certainly the most common. I think it accounts for about 95% of hair loss. But it is important to mention at this point that there are other types of hair loss that causes baldness that are not male pattern baldness. One is alopecia. Now, alopecia can also be genetic, much like male pattern baldness, but there are also environmental factors, stress factors, immune factors. It can be caused by an autoimmune condition, so that's important to bear in mind. You've also got trichotillomania, which is something that I suffer from. Interestingly, when I was doing my research for this video, they've recently found a massive genetic component in trichotillomania sufferers. So anyone watching this video who has trich, like me, might want to check that out. They've found a specific gene which actually predisposes you to having trichotillomania, which is hair pulling. And that's very interesting because I was speaking recently to my mum about trichotillomania, and she said when she was younger, she used to pull her eyelashes out. And my dad as well, he used to fiddle with his hair a lot. So it's very clear that this isn't just in the science. I'm seeing this in my own family. So yeah, very, very interesting. And of course, male pattern baldness, that is genetic. So from what they've found in the research so far, they've found that it's basically a certain type of gene which is susceptible to DHT, which is a hormone which binds to the hair follicles on the top of your head. And this particular gene is very, very sensitive to it, and it causes those particular hair follicles to shrink. There's a really big misconception that hair loss is basically your hair just falls out. That's not the way it works, guys. It's not hair loss. It's basically your hair shrinks and shrinks and shrinks over time until it gets so small that it's effectively microscopic. So it gives the appearance of baldness, but it's not actually your hair just falling out. Now, I think we all know that at the very least, hair loss can have a big effect on men. It can also have an effect on women, obviously, but the focus of this video is particularly on men, so I'm going to talk about men. But yeah, I found some stuff doing a bit of research, and it surprised me how profoundly it affects men, and also the percentage of men who experience hair loss and baldness, the percentage of men that are severely negatively affected by this. It really stunned me, and I will share that in a bit. I came across a quote actually, reading through a few articles, and it felt really, really pertinent, and this is how it went. Quote, "It was like being forced to wear clothes that you wouldn't be seen dead in. I saw a person I didn't want to see in the mirror. I stopped dating." I mean, let's unpack that for a second. So, being forced to wear clothes that you wouldn't be seen dead in. Now, the initial thing that I jumped to when I read that was, yes, because it almost feels like you look at your parents when you're younger and you're like, I wouldn't wear what they're wearing. I wouldn't want to be seen dead wearing that. So it's very, very interesting that stood out to me, because when you experience hair loss and baldness, you look older. You look older than the age you actually are. And that in itself can cause somewhat of an identity crisis. All of a sudden you look older than your peers. You look older than your actual age. That can affect everything. And you can really get a strong level of cognitive dissonance, which is whereby you feel like you're someone else. You don't feel like who you were before. You feel like you've lost a part of your identity. And it's not a surprise. Your appearance formulates a massive part of your identity. And if you're losing a part of that, then it's almost like you're trying to find a new identity away from your original identity. And that is something that's very, very, very challenging to deal with, especially if you don't like the appearance of the new identity. It's tricky. I saw a person that I didn't want to see in the mirror, right? So it's rejection. This is like outright rejection of oneself. You look in the mirror, you want to feel proud of how you look. You want to feel confident about how you look. But when it gets to the point where you are that person who you didn't want to see in the mirror, and for anyone who experiences baldness or who's experienced hair loss watching this, and it's going to be like 99.9% of you watching this, I'm sure you've been through that, because I've certainly been through that. You know, your hair's falling out. You don't recognize yourself anymore. You don't feel confident about yourself because you're looking older than you actually are. You might have, got a bit of banter from your friends. You might have slightly, as a result of the confidence that you're losing, that will affect every single aspect of your life. You probably won't feel confident to go out anymore. You'll probably just wear hats everywhere. You'll be worrying what people are thinking. And the last piece of this quote was, "I stopped dating." And you know what? It's so tragic to read that, because, this guy from this article, he's in his 20s, and he stopped dating in his 20s. That's like prime dating age. That's when you need to be going out and finding a mate, or if you want, sleeping around, whatever. And it's so sad that, losing your hair and having that identity crisis can cause something like that, something so profound that you don't even feel able to go out and date people, or you don't go out and feel able to socialize. It's really, really sad. And I feel so much for this guy, but I also empathize with this guy, because I've certainly been through that. And I know that a lot of you guys would have been through that too. Now, I'm going to share my screen with you, because this is a really, really interesting study that I came across. So let's get you over to my screen. There we are. Okay, so this is a study from like 2005. So it's quite an old study, called The Psychosocial Impact of Hair Loss Among Men, a multinational European study. I'm really interested. I'm really happy, rather, that they're actually doing studies on this, because hair loss within the male community really gets dismissed far too much. So I'm glad there's some science actually looking at this, because it's not just a physical appearance thing. This has a massive impact upon one's mental health. So basically, the objective of this particular study was that hair plays an important role in determining self-image, social perception, and psychosocial functioning. This is just within Europe, by the way, but I imagine that it's probably fairly similar across the board. If you looked at Asia, Europe, we are quite a, I suppose, self-conscious society in general now. If you compare us to 5,000 years ago, obviously, I'm not even sure if mirrors were invented 5,000. Actually, I'm virtually certain they weren't invented 5,000 years ago. And I think the emphasis back then would have been on survival and reproduction. It wouldn't have been on appearance. But obviously, we don't need to worry about survival and reproduction anymore. That is not deemed to be important towards, us living a full and happy life. However, self-perception and appearance is. So we evaluated participants' use of treatments for hair loss. So I'm imagining this is going to be minoxidil, it's going to be Propecia, and whether treatment success was associated with psychological benefit. So they looked at over 1,500 men, and they used a telephone survey to do this. So just under half reported hair loss. So over 70% of these men, 70%, so that's basically 2/3 of this study, reported hair to be an important feature of image. And I'm very much part of that 70%, although it's actually higher than I thought it would be in general terms. And 62%, so again, well over half, agreed that hair loss could affect self-esteem. Now, self-esteem is so important in today's world. People with high self-esteem, right? They get all the women, they get a good job, they get a well-paying job, and they're real social animals, right? They're not worried about, going out, socializing, seeing people, all of that kind of thing. They're basically people who are living their best life. Now imagine 62% of those people being negatively affected by the fact that they've got hair loss. 62% affected by the fact that hair loss and baldness is happening. Like, that's a big number. And just something such as hair can have such a big impact upon someone's self-confidence. It's profound. And the fact that this isn't being talked enough about, it's worrying. It is really, really worrying. So it's interesting as well that 42% feared becoming bald. 42%, so just under half, which is pretty crazy when you think that, over 70% of males at some point in their lifetime will start losing their hair. So just under half of those effectively fear becoming bald. And, in the hair system community, we talk around there being a stigma around hair systems. If there's a fear of becoming bald at just under half of the people within this particular study, maybe there's a stigma around baldness, Maybe there's a stigma around baldness. And the fact that this was done almost 20 years ago, that stigma could be becoming even bigger. And you look at the number of people getting hair transplants, SMP. I'm going to do a video on SMP, by the way, at some point, because I find it very interesting. SMP, hair transplants and hair systems. If more and more people are getting these, yes, maybe there is more of a stigma, an increasingly growing stigma around becoming bald. I don't think there should be, by the way. And I don't think there should be a stigma around hair systems or hair trans. I don't think there should be a stigma around anything regarding men's appearance. Men and women should be able to do whatever makes them feel better about themselves. The crux of it is you need to be doing what makes you feel happy, what makes you feel confident in yourself, and what helps maintain or build your self-esteem. If you're experiencing something that's stopping you from dating, or stopping you from socializing, or stopping you from going for big jobs that you really want, then that needs to be addressed, and that needs to be addressed now. So in conclusion, the results of this survey indicate a gap between the need for treatment of hair loss and initiation of such treatment among men in 5 European countries. Further research is needed into the factors affecting men's willingness to seek treatment for hair loss. I think this very much comes back to just get on with it, man up and get on with it. And I've spoken about that particular phrase, man up, and I think it's one of the most toxic phrases in the Western world. I really, really, really do. Because effectively what you're doing, when someone's saying man up, they're effectively dismissing someone else's feelings. They're dismissing what someone else is experiencing, what they're feeling, and that is really, really unhealthy. And I'd like to make a comparison at this point. I think this is a very good comparison, by the way, because I was mentioning earlier that 70% of men at some point in their life experience hair loss, right? So we're working with the majority of the male population here. Now, women, when they sort of turn between the ages of sort of like 40 to sort of 55, women go something called the menopause, right? And that's literally like, it's more than 70%, but it's a lot of women, okay? So it feels fair to make this comparison. Now, when I went on the NHS, now for my American friends and anyone outside the UK, the NHS is the National Health Service, so we have free healthcare in this country. We're very, very lucky to do so. They don't have anything on male pattern baldness. They don't have anything in terms of support services, anything like that. No sort of advice on how to deal with baldness in general, okay? And I think that's wrong. I think that's very wrong. However, just one search on the NHS website about menopause, and straight up it comes with very good advice. Why isn't this available for men who are going through baldness? Because again, we're working with the majority here. Majority of men will experience some level of hair loss or complete baldness in their lifetime, much like women with menopause. Eating well, exercising, and here is the crux, looking after your mental well-being, okay? And I'd just like to add at this point as well that women are not judged for going on hormone replacement therapy when they're going through their menopause. If anything, it's like, well done for doing that. Well done for reducing the suffering that you're going through. And, you know, my mum went on it. She tried some herbal alternatives as well. But with quite a lot of males, it's just like, man up and get on with it. Everyone goes through it. And it's like, well, everyone goes through every female goes through menopause. Every female goes through menopause. Yet it's actively encouraged that they actually do something to help reduce the symptoms that they're experiencing. So I think, you know, that needs to change. I'm hopeful that in time it does change, guys. And I'm certainly going to be, you know, holding the flag and, you know, leading the way with this, because it's so important. At the end of the day, we're all human. At the end of the day, we all have feelings and we all have emotions. And if anything is affecting our emotions or our mental well-being in a negative way, there's something we need to do something about that. You know, manning up and getting through it, that's called suppression of symptoms, and that can manifest itself in very ugly ways in the future. So yeah, very important to think about. So how has baldness affected you guys? Let me know in the comments box below. Let's start a discussion about this, a nice open discussion. If you're interested in checking out any videos related to this, I made a video a while back. It's going to pop up on the screen right now, called 3 Reasons I Don't Date Bald Guys. I go over a discussion that I had with a few of my fiance's friends and their perception of baldness. So it's pretty brutal, pretty honest, but, you know, I don't sugarcoat things. So give that a watch right now, and I'll speak to you very soon. Bye for now.